Hi, good morning. This is Trish Chapman at the Coastal Conservancy, and thank you for joining our webinar on the Explore the Coast grant program. I'm here with Abra Heller, Linda Tong, and Fanny Yang, who are all project managers and on our Explore the Coast working committee. We're going to go over the program and our RFP to help folks understand the program better for those of you who are thinking of applying. And we're going to give our presentation and then we'll answer questions, and you can submit questions at any time using the question box on your screen. So first, I just want to talk for a second about our basic goal with the Explore the Coast program. So we believe here at the Coastal Conservancy that the ocean and the coast and beaches have long been recognized and used as spaces of joy, relaxation, and healing. And the Explore the Coast grant program seeks to provide coastal experiences for people and communities who face challenges or barriers getting to or enjoying the coast. And we want to share and spread the joy and healing that a day at the beach can provide. We think that this can positively affect people's lives in a lot of different ways. So we're going to emphasize probably repeatedly throughout this that we are really about people having fun, experiencing the joy of the coast, and helping them overcome the barriers that might not make the coast initially enjoyable for them. The program is targeted to, as I said, communities that face barriers accessing or enjoying the coast. And in the RFP, we've identified several communities that we think fit that category, including low-income individuals and households, people with disabilities, people of color, English as a second language communities, immigrant communities, foster youth. But we recognize that there's other communities that may face barriers, and so your application can address a different community, and you just need to explain to us how they fall into our priority to serve people that aren't accessing the coast now for one reason or another. So the program has besides serving people that face a barrier getting to or enjoying the coast, the program has three key priorities. The first is to provide an enjoyable experience at the coast, back to the joy and the fun factor. Second would be to reduce economic, physical, operational, or societal barriers to accessing or enjoying the coast. And if you take folks to the coast for a trip one time, you're addressing that barrier on that day, and that's a good thing. But we're also really looking for programs that are helping address those barriers in a longer term way by, well, I guess we'll get into that later when we talk more about the application. And then the third priority is to inspire ongoing coastal resource stewardship ethic through active learning and interactive activities. So those are our three secondary priorities beyond getting people to the coast who aren't getting there. What kinds of things do we fund? First of all, this year we're adding a requirement that at least 50% of the project participants must come from Explore the Coast priority community, and that means a community facing a barrier. Actually, I think we added that requirement last year. Programs, we fund programs to play, sail, other activities, go out into the ocean on boats, hands-on, highly interactive environmental education programs. And I already talked about we're looking for programs that help participants overcome their barriers to coastal access at more than a one-time experience. And we're also looking for programs that have a real impact on participants through immersive experiences or ones with opportunities to build leadership or job skills or other types of impact that can have a longer-term effect on the participants. What we don't fund projects that only include classroom-based programs and or curriculum. One of our funding sources for the program specifically requires that the funds be used at the Outer Coast. So we won't fund a project where you're just teaching about the coast in a classroom. With this program, we don't fund construction of facilities. We have other can fund or other types of facilities. You should send an email to talk to us about other potential funding sources. And then we also don't fund projects that are solely beach cleanups. That doesn't really fit our joy model. So I'm going to pass it over to Avra now, and she's going to tell you more about the application and the program.
Hi all. So for starters, it's really exciting. We have approximately $1.4 million that we are expecting to be able to give out in grants this round, which is significantly more than our last round, so that's really exciting for us. There's a maximum award amount of $50,000, but there's no minimum award. So, you know, it can be a middle school club that wants to do a one-time field trip, and that can be like a $5,000 grant. So there's anyone who fits the goals of the program is welcome to apply. Applications are due Monday, March 30th, and they will be, it's in the RFP, but you can mail that in to grants@scc.ca.gov. And then we will go through a project selection process with our staff as well as the Explore the Coast Advisory Board. And we will take projects to our board and officially fund projects in September of this year. So when you're thinking about applying, you should be looking at projects that can start at earliest in November of 2020. And the funding is available for projects that have programming through February of 2023. So just to keep that in mind when you're thinking about your application and the timelines you're applying for. Oops, sorry. So this front page is the top face page of your application. It's pretty straightforward, and it's just an overarching what your organization's name is, who we should be contacting about the application, including their title, and email and phone information, the address of the organization, and your tax ID number, and that's useful for us if you to become a selected applicant, because we need that for our grant making process. And then very, very high level, the name of your project, how much money you're requesting from us, and then how much money total the project costs you. So if you have other fund sources, you can just include that total amount there. And then your proposed timeline, your proposed start and end dates. And then the location info, we just need to know where your programming will be taking place. And that is important to us in terms of, as Trish mentioned, some of our money is we're only able to spend it at the Outer Coast, so that helps us figure out different pots of money to spend on different projects. And then we wanted to highlight and take a little bit of time on a few of the questions that we think are the top level places where you will really have a chance to explain to us what your program is about and who you'll be serving and how you're going to get to serve those people. So the first question is just referencing the Explore the Coast program priorities that Trish just mentioned. So for example, just kind of getting into an enjoyable experience at the coast, how it reduces economic, physical, operational, or societal barriers to accessing or feeling welcome at the coast. And then finally, how that program may inspire ongoing coastal resource stewardship through active learning or just an active engagement in experiencing the coast. So that's really what we want people to touch on in question 1. In question 4, we particularly are asking about the participant's experience, and that's where we really want you to get into detail about the actual programming, like what a day in the program will look like for a participant. You're going to talk about here ways in which the program might have long-term positive impacts on the participant. And some of the stuff we're going to look like for long-term positive impacts will include things such as leadership opportunities within the program. If it's a program that has multi-year opportunities for participants, or extended touch where you encounter the program many times over the course of the year. If the program is involving families or other support systems, if there's mentorship involved. So it's a wide variety of types of program aspects that we would look at to count towards having a long-term impact. And we are happy to answer many questions about that, which I'm sure folks will have. And then question 5 is program duration, which is where you really dive into if it's a one-day trip, if it's, you know, a weekly class for over a course of a semester, if it's a week-long backpacking trip. You really talk to us about what the actual time on the ground with the participant will be and what their experience on the ground will be. And we're asking all these questions not that we have a specific target duration, but we need to kind of know how long your program is and how much impact it, like time per participant your program has, as a way to compare and contrast applicants across scope and get an idea of relative cost between applications. So that's why we're asking those questions. And then again, talking about our questions 2 and 3 really focus on who will be participating in the program. And that's where you can really dive into the communities your program will be serving, how you plan to recruit participants, how your program will be inclusive, and the steps you are taking to make sure of that. And then also specifically, you can discuss how people with disabilities will be able to be served through your program. And so that's really, question 2 kind of dives into the specific community you're serving. And question 3 is a list of summaries, and it's on the right side of the page. And basically the table, we want you to say the total number of participants that your program will serve with our funding, the total number of participants who will be from a priority community as you have defined the previous question. And then the next section is where your participants are coming from. So we're really trying to make sure that the largest amount of Californians have access. Not concerned about your participants do, but we are interested in knowing where your participants will be coming from. And we'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about which regional manager you should reach out to with more specific questions. Tisha, do you want to add anything to that?
Nope, that sounds good.
And then there's a table at the back of the application that is an optional table that gives you the opportunity to go into a higher level of specifics on the ETC priority community served, if you would like to fill that in. And we're just asking folks to estimate the number of participants per each category if they choose to fill in this table. And some of the things that we've talked about and have targeted in past grant rounds, and our barriers, our communities that face barriers that we have worked with previously include low-income communities, people with disabilities, English as a second language, foster youth, which Trish mentioned. And then we also have an opportunity, if folks want to list out specific kind of racial groups and community groups, they're welcome to do that. And there's space to add any breakdown of a group that you want to include if you would like to include that information. And then other communities facing barriers to accessing or joining the coast, we have had applications in the past specifically focusing with communities who are formerly incarcerated. If you have a community who you're working with that you'd like to highlight in that way, you're welcome to add that to this table. So that's just, it's an option to add clarification to your community that you're serving, and if you want, you can do. And then some helpful resources when you're developing your budget and timeline. At the bottom of the RFP, we've included links to our sample grant terms, which would be important to review because we are delighted to be able to give out this program, and we try to be a very flexible. Having a grant with the state is still a fairly large lift. So the sample grant terms will give you a clear idea of the kinds of requirements that we include in our grants and what you would be expected from legally to be able to provide and with us. And then the next link that's more for your application would be there's a sample budget and budget narrative. And on this page. So the budget is just a very simple table. We're asking you to list various tasks that you'll achieve, and if you have requested $1,000 for us, and you say the cost of the program is $150,000, fall out in terms of the cost of your. The budget narrative section on the task and dollar amount. So for example, if project management or project preparation has $8,000, various staff of your salary rate, how you got to that 8,000. The same for implementation. Detail on bringing folks to the beach and then having a surf lesson, talking about the renting of gear if you need that, paying for surf instructors, whatever it is that will need to be spent on. Helps us get a sense of our program and your capacity to implement the project. Clear view of where you're at with your program and being able to execute it. So that's really important. And again, we are around and happy to answer questions and can help people answer questions and think through some of these processes. And then this final slide is just a kind of overview of how we're thinking about the scoring criteria. Trish, can you move the... and shows you a little bit just about how we're weighting things. And it's been what Trish and I have been saying throughout, which is our highest priority is really that you're serving a community that faces barriers to accessing the coast or enjoying the coast, and that your program provides an enjoyable experience. Those are really the top two priorities. Also importantly weighted in this criteria are impacts on your participants. And then there's a few that are more heavily weighted in terms of capacity to manage this project, which we're really looking hard at the budget being reasonable relatively as a cost per participant, and that you guys, the project applicant has a capacity to carry out the is based on a variety of factors. And Trish, do you want
to? No, one thing that I'd say is this table didn't make it into the RFP, our oversight, sorry. So I want to do a screenshot right now while it's up. About that.
Yeah. Of the overall score important to us are specific barriers that the project doing coastal resource stewardship. have written a grant before, we give some room for that being a work in progress. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And again, we can answer questions along the way and kind of help you think through an application, kind of what we're looking for and what might be a flag for us as well.
Yeah, so I think we'll move on to questions now. Oh no, let's see, we have the who to contact. Oops, can you do that? I was going to spell that. I think I messed it up. There. Okay, so this contact information is in the RFP. We strongly recommend that you call us, or actually email us, and then we'll set up a call. But you email us to set up a time to talk to the appropriate regional manager as shown on this list, and because we will help you. We'll talk with you about your project, help you understand what are the aspects that are the best fit for the Explore the Coast program, help you understand what to highlight and explain in your application, and we'll also give you a fairly honest assessment of how competitive your project will be. Last year, I think we were able to fund about 1 out of every 5 applications, so it's very competitive. As Avra said, we are going to have almost twice as much money this year, so we're going to be able to fund more, but I still expect it to be a pretty competitive program. And anyways, you can apply no matter what we tell you, but but we try to give people a reasonable assessment about, based on past experience, how their project might fare. I think we also left out saying that the projects will be, the projects that we recommend will be based on the review of Conservancy staff and our advisory board. And from that, it will go to the Coastal Conservancy board to make the final decision.
All right, okay. I think we can do questions now.
Okay.
All right.
Do we have any?
Yes, we do. We do have some questions. So actually, our first question is, will there be a recording of this available after? And I would say the answer is yes. The session is currently being recorded, and on another note about audio cutting in and out, so that you can get sort of the fuller picture, and if you missed any parts where the audio was cutting out, we can have that as part of the recording. I think we'll also put it on our website as a resource, and for people to look at. Yeah. And so our first question related to the program is, would activities on creek watershed that drains to SF Bay qualify?
Can you answer that, Over?
And I guess on a similar question too, could you elaborate on the definition of the coast, and does this include wetlands and estuaries?
Okay. So San Francisco Bay has a slightly different set of funding and what is allowed. I do believe that a creek, like we're going to a creek around the bay, would fit, but we would need to follow up and talk to the San Francisco Bay regional manager. Sorry that we can't answer that one off the top of the head. So in terms of what counts as the coast, yeah, definitely tidal wetlands. In terms of the funding source, so about half of the funding comes from a funding source that actually the restriction is that it can be used to operate facilities on the outer coast. And we take a broad view of that operating the facility includes bringing people to the coast to experience the facility. Anything that's in the coastal zone can fit for that because of the source of the funding. So give us a follow-up question if that didn't answer.
And Next question is, how is low income defined?
We don't have a strict definition of low income like some of the other grant programs that only let you do it based on a map. But one way that it has been defined in a lot of the previous programs is students that qualify for reduced or free lunch programs, and Title I schools are where at least 50% of the student body meet that requirement. So you should explain to us why that your community is low income, but we don't have a firm definition.
So going back to the types of projects that we do not fund, such as construction of facilities, so does the program fund design planning of future facilities, such as trails, piers, and boat launch?
No. So design of facilities or construction of facilities, those are activities that we can fund with bond funding, and we as an organization have far more bond funding than we do non-bond funding. The Explore the Coast program and everything it does cannot be funded with bond funds. And so we won't fund any project through Explore the Coast with those like precious non-bond funds that we could potentially fund with bond funds. So we'll potentially be interested in your project, but you should contact the same contact person to inquire about your project, but it would be outside of this program.
Okay. And do we pay for lodging at multi-day activities? That's one question.
Yeah, this is all right. We can definitely pay for lodging if you're taking kids out to a campsite for a couple of days or however that is. Obviously, we're going to look at it, and if your lodging is a 5-star hotel, then that's less likely. But lodging is definitely something we can help fund. Transportation of all kinds we can fund. It's pretty flexible money.
Yeah, we've definitely funded projects where like a program rented out a camping facility, and yeah, we pay the rent.
Okay. Someone asked, is this the same application process for past recipients of ETC grants?
Working with our advisory board this year, we have changed the application. So the process is pretty much the same, but it is a different it's a modified application.
Okay. Someone asked, what is outer coast? So just maybe briefly redefining what outer coast means.
I think I did that already.
Okay.
With the.
So yeah, the outer coast is just if it's touching the ocean, is the outer coast, and then we also can fund programs around San Francisco Bay, which we're defining as a different shoreline. Yeah,
the funding source that we have that's for the quote-unquote outer coast does not extend inside of the Golden Gate Bridge for San Francisco Bay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sorry, we couldn't possibly explain to you why the logic of that is, but that's the law.
Okay. Is match considered as part of the selection criteria?
No, the program doesn't require match.
Okay. May a nonprofit 501c3 and a subsidiary nonprofit organization, but under the same 501c3, submit 2 separate proposals?
They're both 501c3s?
Yes, but under, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one organization could submit 2 proposals, but in general, like I said, the program is really competitive, and so if the 2 proposals serve a similar constituency or cover similar types of activities, you're probably better off deciding which of the programs or a combination of the program is your highest priority, because otherwise the chances that we would fund both are probably low if they're similar like I described. And so that means we would decide which is the priority rather than you.
And then I also, this is Abra, I want to highlight that something that sometimes is a challenge for our nonprofit grantees is that we cap indirect costs at 15% of the total dollar value of the grant. So if you were having a nested 501c3 applicant, we would be looking pretty closely at your potential indirect and management costs. So that's just something to know, that we can fund staff, we can fund in programming, we can fund supplies for your programs, but indirects are something that you need to think about too when you apply to our grants.
Okay. So what qualifies as an enjoyable experience? How do we think about fun? Does informal learning or play-based activities count?
Yes, that is what we're looking for.
I would say we would you know, it's partially measured in like smiles, reaction of your participants. I guess it's also easier sometimes to say the opposite. So a program, for instance, a lot of what we fund is often for kids, and so a program where kids are talked at about some topic would not rate as well as a program where kids sort of dive in and have a hands-on experience with that.
Okay. Can you provide examples of barriers faced by priority communities? The person who submitted this question listed some examples, potential examples, like thinking about access, part poor neighborhoods, and also transportation to the coast.
Those are barriers. There's also just discomfort with and unfamiliarity with the ocean can be a barrier to enjoying it. Not seeing people that look like you or at the coast or doing the activity that you want to do at the coast can be a barrier. You guys want to jump in?
Physical disability, can be a barrier. So programs that help people, like adaptive kayaking, adaptive beach trail adventures, like all of that, it's definitely a community that this program serves.
I think those are all good examples. And is this a reimbursable grant?
Good question. So it is, but we are going to offer a route for funding or in
but it's fine if it's a low fee. Again, we're going to be, that's why we're asking those questions about the cost per participant and the timeline of impact. So we are going to be able to take a look at what looks reasonable to us relative to what you're charging your participants versus their potential ability to pay. But a small fee is fine. It's not an automatic out.
Okay. I think this question goes back to the definition of outer coast again. Do coastal dunes and coastal scrub habitat meet that definition?
yes.
Yeah.
All right. And this is the last question that I have currently on the screen. Can a nonprofit organization partner with another nonprofit organization to provide two different coastal activities and give a sub-grant to the other nonprofit organization?
Yes.
All right.
Again, though, Avra mentioned that we have a 15%, we have a cap of 15% of the total grant cost for indirect costs. So the two organizations would have to work out amongst themselves how to divide that potential amount.
Okay. Actually, I've got one more. Oh, I got more questions chiming in. All right. So moving on, along the lines of a hands-on environmental education experience for youth, can the ongoing or long-term impact piece be covered by the increased interest in STEM, coastal stewardship, et cetera?
Oh, sorry, I got distracted. Will you read that again?
Yeah, I can read that again. So just talking about providing a hands-on environmental education experience for youth, can that be covered by having like a STEM education or increasing their interest in coastal stewardship?
I think you would have to explain to us how you were tracking that. So, you know, for example, you've been running your program for many years and you're seeing a significant increase in interest in your program and applicants to your program, that's a pretty clear correlation. If you're just generally talking about that the field, there's growing interest in the field writ large, that might not be the strongest argument. So that's just, you know, up to you guys in your application how to frame that and make that case for yourself in your program.
Right. Should we mention past success of programs that are currently proposing? Let's see if I can rephrase this question and make more sense. Should we mention the past success of the program or project that they are putting in the application?
Yep.
Yeah.
Please do.
That's part of the metrics question, I think.
Yeah, that is a big part of, there's a metrics question where you talk about the applicant's capacity to actually implement the program they're applying for, and being able to talk about your past successes is a very strong way to make that case.
Yeah, and I'll also just say that in general, we are more likely to fund a program with a track record than a brand new program.
And are adult programs competitive?
Yes.
Yes.
And then last question, would outreach bringing kids into marine protected areas with our MPA network be considered a project if some funding is available already via a Ocean Protection Council grant or proposed OPC grant?
Yeah,
Potentially.
potentially.
Mm-hmm. How important is it to include demographics for the different regions of California? What if the program targets college students and grad students?
I think it's totally fine. We don't need to get the same level of demographics throughout the whole state or even that optional table on the back, but you would, again, still have to be able to explain to us how that community faces barriers accessing the coast. And that, again, is what you would have to emphasize, is how you're defining that community as having challenges accessing the coast and what your programming is doing to provide that gap.
Yeah.
So that's all the questions that I have for now. Do we want to wait to see if any more are coming in, or?
I think we'll assume that you all have asked your questions. Yeah. And we will post this recording on our webpage, a recording of this webinar on our webpage, and we will also posted up that scoring criteria sheet. And then please just email first. So my recommendation on contacting the folks in the contact list is to send an email with like a 2-sentence description of your project and a request for a conversation. It's always helpful if you send sometimes where you're available, and then we will set up a call with you to go specifically about your project and how it fits and how you can strengthen your application and where weaknesses might be. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.